Five already. My name is Yusuf Caroline, and I'll be the moderator for today. And our speaker for today is going to be Bolaji Olatunde. So Bolaji is a data and business intelligence analyst who is skilled at using Microsoft Excel and Power BI to develop analytics and reporting solutions. He is also a Microsoft certified Power BI data analyst and is currently a final year economics student at the University of Lagos. So he's going to be taking us today on data transformation. So Balaji, up to you. You can start the class now.
Yeah, all right. Good evening, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. So I would share my screen now. Okay. Yeah, so, okay. Please can you confirm that you can see my screen now?
Yeah, I can see your screen. I can see your screen. I don't know about us.
All right. I think if you can, others should see it as well. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's class. I'm going to be taking data transformation with Power Query. My name is Bolaji Olatunde. So just like I've been introduced already, I do data and business intelligence analytics. I'm a final year student at University of Lagos, and I'm also a Microsoft certified data analyst. So for today, we are going to be looking at data transformation, which just basically means taking data from, it's raw from an unprepared or unstructured form and making it and turning it into a form that is much more useful for analytics. And to do that, I have prepared a set of data sets that we are going to use for this class and also for the next one. So to get that, just go to the URL on the screen now, tinyurl.com/OUI-transform, and you'll get the data set. Okay. Yeah. So let me see how many people we have on the call now before I go into more depth. Okay, I think we have a few of us on the call already. All right. So if anyone, the moderators could help provide the link in the group chat and the chat rather, so when people join in, they can access it and get the link to the data set.
Okay, I'll do that now.
All right, thank you. So what are we going to cover in this class and the next class, right? So we are going to be looking at data transformation, and we are going to go through a couple of things as it relates to data transformation. Now, in the previous classes that we've held so far, we've already been working with Power Query in Excel, Power Query in Power BI. We've done a little bit of bringing in data and cleaning it, transforming it for analysis. So what we are going to do starting from today would be to go into a little bit of those basic stuff around the Power Query editor, around data cleaning and data transformation, right? So we'll look at the Power Query editor, we'll get introduced to what the different functions of, the different buttons in the UI, that is the user interface, what you can do with it. Then we'll pull in data from multiple sources, mash it up together. We would also look at the data quality and the data profile to see what is the distribution, what is the quality of the data that we brought in. And then we'll look at data types and why it is important that when you are cleaning data with Power Query, you always specify the right data type for each column in your data. And then we'll do some transformations to change the structure of our data, like adding new columns to it, merging queries, appending queries, cleaning, removing blanks, removing nulls, and all of those stuff, right? So to do all of those, we just have a very simple case study that we are going to work with. Okay, so the case study is just a little bit made up. You're an analyst, you've been asked to create a sales report for a fictitious firm with the following data. So we have sales data, sales information provided in 3 different file formats. We have one as an Excel file, we have a text file, we have a CSV file. Then we also have another data containing the list of the customers that we have, which is the customer database. And that is also an Excel file. Then we have another set of tables that have been mashed up into one single table referred to as additional tables. Okay, so what we are going to do is we will take all of those data sets, the sales data from the text file, the sales data from the CSV, the sales data from the Excel file, as well as the other additional data sets that we have in the Excel file, the customer, and then we will take that, bring it into Power Query, do a bit of transformation, and the goal is to create this data model that you see right on the screen, right? So we are going to take all of this, mash it up together, do what we need to do on it, and our end result is going to be this data model, right? Okay, so with that said, let's now jump into Power BI. If you still haven't been able to access the data, that's the link again. Just copy the link into your browser and you get the data set. All right, let's open Power BI now. So far, this is the second week in the bootcamp, and by now we've already had classes that relates to the overview of Power BI. So you are very much familiar with Power BI by now. So what we are going to do now is the goal of the report that we're trying to create, right, is okay, we need to bring in data from a set of folders. So before we do that, I'll just open the folder and see the data sets that we have. So we have, as you can see this folder here, we have one table containing additional tables, customer database. We have a text sales data. We have a CSV sales data. We have an Excel file, which is also a sales data. So now we want to bring in those data sets one after the other into Power Query and mash it up. Now, how do we access Power Query? All you need to do is go to get data, and then you click on this drop down that you have here. And then in our case, we are going to bring in an Excel workbook first. But just to show you that you're not restricted to just bringing in files on your system, right? In the previous classes, you've seen how you could bring in data directly from the web. You also have a host of other options from which you can bring in data. Just give me a moment. All right. So we have a host of other options on which you can bring in data. You can bring in data from an Excel workbook, a text file, from folder, from PDF, from a database, from from the Power Platform, from Azure, from multitude of online services. But for the first data we are going to bring in is going to be an Excel workbook. So I'm just going to select Excel workbook here and click connect. Now it's going to ask me that where is the location of this Excel workbook. So you navigate to the folder where you have the data downloaded, and I'm just going to select sales 2017.xlsx, which is an Excel file, and I'll click open. Now, as I click open, it's going to try and create a connection to that Excel file, and then it is going to show me a preview of what it was able to find in that Excel file. Right? So you should see this new dialog or this new pop-up box with the list of worksheet that we have in that Excel file. So in our case, we only have just one worksheet in the Excel file. If I click on it here, it's going to show me a preview of what I have in the data set. So I have order ID, dates. I can confirm if this is actually what I want to bring into Power Query. Once I'm sure that is it, I'm going to click this checkbox here and I'm going to hit transform data, not load. If I hit load, it's going to take the data straight into Power BI, but I still want to clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to hit transform data. Now, once I hit transform data, it is going to open up the Power Query editor, right, which is a familiar user interface by now. So what do we have here in the Power Query editor? We have a UI that is very familiar, very similar to all of the Microsoft products. So you have tabs across at the top. At the left-hand side here, you have the list of queries. That is, what are the list of tables that you're trying to bring into Power Query. At this point, we have just one query here. And then at the center, which is the main data we're working with, we have a preview of the data that we're trying to bring in. At the right-hand side here, we have the name of the query, and we have the list of steps that are being applied to this data, basically the list of transformations that we are applying to the data. So the first thing you should always do anytime you connect to a new data source that you want to transform is rename your queries, right? So this one just picked the name of the work file and called it 2017 sales. I'm going to rename it by coming at the right hand side here under properties, and I'll just highlight this and I'll call it sales underscore 2017, for example, right? Now, anytime you bring in data, no matter the data source, right, until you bring in data, Power Query automatically applies a set of steps for you, right? So you see on the apply steps, we have source, which was the first step. So source just navigated to the work file. And then we have navigation, which selected the exact worksheet that we wanted to work with. And then Power Query automatically applied a promote header step, which promoted the first row as headers. And then it did a change type by trying to detect what data type I have on each column. So with that out of the way, the next thing you should do is try and look at, okay, what is the distribution of the data I have, what kind of data do I have versus what am I expecting. Now to do that, we have at the top here, we have about 4 to 5 tabs. We have the home, transform, add column, and view tab. Now on the home tab, you have a set of transformation options that relate mostly to changing the structure of the table as a whole. So if you, most times when you want to do something to your table that is going to affect the table altogether, right? That particular transformation would most likely be in the home tab as an option. Then on the transform tab, you have options that help you change the nature or the shape of a single column, right? So maybe you want to replace a value on the single column, you want to add a value on the single column. That option is most likely going to be under the transform tab. Now, the add columns tab is very similar to the transform tab. So you have the same set of options on the transform tab, also on the add columns tab, except when you do something through the add columns, it adds a new column rather than change the structure of a selected column. Then on the view tab, we have the option to view certain metrics. So now we want to look at data profile, right? What kind of data do we have? So across, if I just scroll from left to right, I see all of the tables that was brought in, right? From my order ID to the order date, ship mode, some information on customer, product, and some sales, quantity, discount, and profit related information. Now, let's say I want to look at, let me look for, yeah, let's say I want to look at products, for example, or let's use subcategory, right? And I want to see what are the number of values, right? What is the distribution of subcategories that I have in this column, right? I'll navigate to the view tab, and in this data preview group, I have a set of options that help me do that. The first thing we are going to look at is column quality. So I'm going to uncheck every other thing and I'm going to select column quality, right? And what the column quality just basically is if I toggle it off now, okay, you see that I do not have that big box right under the header. So if I select column quality shows me the number of valid entries I have, how many of those entries in that column is an error, how many of those entries in that column is empty, right? So it scans through the data and tries to give me that statistic. Now that's usually helpful if you're not supposed to have a blank, you're not supposed to have a null value in that column, and because you have a large data set, you may not easily spot it by scrolling through, right? So enabling column quality gives you that information. The next thing we will look at is column, not profile now, column distribution, right? And this was something that was made mention of in the last class. So column distribution is, you see, as I toggle it on and off, I have this new extra, like a small bar chart, right? And that just shows me the number of distinct and the number of unique values that I have. So in this column now, I'm seeing that it seems I have about 17 distinct values. So that's always useful when, okay, you have a column that you're not expecting. Let's say I have a gender column, for example, in my data set. I'm not expecting more than 2 values in the gender as an example, right? Male, female. And then I just enable column distribution, and then I'm seeing that I have 4 distinct values, for example. That proves me to go into that data and find out, okay, where do I have an error? It could be that, okay, someone spelled their own male as F-A-L-E-E. So I'm able to detect that by looking at, okay, how many distinct values do I have? And I correct that. So that is the data column distribution, right? That's the column distribution. And then the last option we have when it comes to data profiling and column quality, it's the column profile. So if I check the box on column profile, you see I now have more detail about the distribution of whatever column I've selected. So we are still on the subcategory column, right? So now I see that, okay, I have, it's telling me I have 1000 values in that column. We'll get to that in a little bit. But then I now have a distribution of the values in that column. So binders, if I hover on it, it tells me that, okay, binders has 158 values, which is about 15%. So paper is the second most populous value I have in that column. And then it gives me that information all true, right? So that's always very useful, mostly when you're trying to see what is in this column, what am I expecting, and that helps you to spot anomalies or values that you need to change or correct or update. Okay, now an important note is that all of these data profiling and data quality measures that Power Query provides you is by default done based on the first 1000 rows. So Power Query takes your data, scans the first 1000 rows, and gives you these statistics, right? If you want to look at the entire data set, right, which can be expensive depending on how much data you have, it will take a while before it's able to scan it. But if you want to change column profiling, right, based on not just the first 1000 rows, but on the entire data set, if you come down to the bottom of the screen here, you would see where I have 16 columns, 999 plus rows, and then column profiling based on top 1000 rows. And if I select that column profiling based on top 1000 rows, I now get two options. So either do the column profiling on the top 1000 rows or the column profiling on the entire data set, right? So if I wanted to look at the entire data set, I would just select column profiling based on the entire data set. But for now, for today, we are not going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the view tab and I'm going to uncheck column profile and also uncheck column distribution. I'm fine with just data quality, right? Okay. Yeah. So the next thing would now also look at, since we've gone through the options that we have in the Power Query Editor, we've seen what are the actions that we can perform in the Power Query Editor and what does Power Query do for us by default. The next thing we are going to look at is data types. And data types is very, very important because it impacts how Power Query stores the value that you are bringing in. And this was a very common error that a lot of people have faced while working with data from, trying to replicate what has been done in the previous classes. Now, if I just scroll through these columns, like I mentioned earlier, Power Query scans your data and tries to add a few steps for you, right? And one of those steps is this change type step. So Power Query has gone through your data, try to detect that, oh, what kind of data is this? Is it a text? Is it a number? Is it a date? So that primarily those are the three broad data types you have. So once Power Query has done that for me by default, I would also go back and investigate that did Power Query detect the data type correctly or not. Okay, now I see order ID. It marks it as a text. How do I know it's a text? If you look at the order ID column, there is this small box that shows ABC. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit. Yeah, okay. So there is a small box there that shows ABC. So that ABC is an indication of what data type I have in that column. So if I click on ABC icon now, I see a list of other data types that I could change this column to. In this case, I'm fine with this column being text. I look at my order date and I also see, okay, it was able to detect it as a date. I would go through each of those columns that way. I look at the ship date. That also seems to be a date. Now, sometimes you may see, let's say you have a column, a value, right, in your column, most commonly with dates, and then you are seeing it there that it is showing, let's say, 20th of April 2017, and you know it is a date, right? Or Power Query has maybe detected it as a text, which we are going to see an example shortly. And then you are now trying to use that in your calculations and it's not working correctly. It's not working because you've not told Power BI or you've not correctly specified in the transformation that this column is a date, this column is an integer. And I'll give you an example of where having the wrong data type can be a problem. Okay, I'm going to scroll down to the right now, and we are going to look at two columns here. So I have at the extreme right here, I have my discount column and I have my profit column, and I also have quantity and I have sales. So let's say we want to enrich this table by calculating our discount amount, right? So this discount information here is in percentages. So 0.2 means that we give a 20% discount on that sale. 0.3 we give a 30% discount on that sale. And so I want to calculate my discount amount. How do I calculate my discount amount? I just basically do what? I multiply my discount by my sales value. right? So if someone bought something for 100 naira or $100 as the case may be, and I'm giving a discount of 20%, the discount amount is going to be 20% multiplied by the sale amount, which was 100 naira or dollars. Now that means that I want to do what? I want to add a new column that is going to do that calculation. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the discount column. I'll hold my control key and select the sales column, and then I'll go over to the add columns tab. So I want to add a new column, so I'll go to add columns tab, and then at this top here under this from number group, you will see standard. So with standard I can perform basic math operations: add, multiply, subtract, divide. So I'm going to select standard and I will click on multiply. So Power Query is going to take my my discount column, my sales amount column, and do a multiplication for me. Okay. So it has done the multiplication and it has given me the amount. And if I look at the top here, I see that the data type is showing 1.2. If I'm not sure what 1.2 means, I'll just click on it and I say, okay, 1.2 stands for decimal number. And that works fine because I had the right data types there. Let's see what happens if we don't have the right data type. So on the list of applied steps here, you see that a new step has been added, which is referred to as inserted multiplication. I am going to select that and just press the X beside it to remove that step. Now, I would go to the sales amount column, for example, and let's say by mistake, right, Power Query detected it as date. I'm going to select text. I'm sorry, as text, right? I'm going to select text here. Okay, and it's asking me, do I want to replace or add? In this case, I'm just going to choose add new step. Okay, and now you see the difference. Before, let me go back to the previous step. You see before all the values were right aligned, and the moment I changed the data type to text, all the values became left aligned. Okay, all the values became left aligned. So that alignment of the values by default is an indication of whether or not you have a text or a number. Now let's see what happens if I try to create my discount amount now, doing what I just did before, right? My sales is selected, I hit control, I select discount, add columns, and I go to, now even already, Power Query doesn't even enable standard option here. I can't even perform any math operation. Why? I have a text data type. You can't multiply number by text. You get? So that is why, that's an example of why your data type is very important. So I'm going to X out this step here and leave it as we had before. Okay, so this is our first data set that we have brought in. We have just looked at it to see that the other date, the ship date, everything is looking fine. And that is our sales 2017 value, sales 2017 table. Okay, so we are going to bring in the next table. And if I just open the folder, okay, I see that I have sales 2017, which is an Excel file. I have sales 2016 underscore 2015, which is a CSV file. So we are going to bring in the sales 2015 CSV file now. So what we want to do is what we want to either add a new table or change the structure of a table. So I'm going to go to the home tab, and at the left hand side here I see new source. Okay, I'm going to select new source. Now what do I want to bring in? I want to bring in a CSV file. I go to text/CSV, I select text/CSV, and then I navigate to the folder and I select the CSV file I want to bring in, which is sales 2016 underscore 2015. Click open. Again, Power Query runs through, creates a connection to that file and imports it into Power Query, basically. So now I have this window here that has tried to run through the data set, detect, okay, I'm bringing in a CSV file. It's finding, okay, what's the delimiter? It has done the data type detection based on the first 200 rows. I'm just going to click OK and examine what Power Query has done. So as always, first thing is I check my query name or my table name. In this case, it is called sales 2016 underscore 2015. I think I'm fine with that, no problem. And let's see the steps that Power Query has applied. So source, it navigated to that workbook. It picked up the, not your workbook now, the CSV file, navigated to the CSV file, brought in the data, okay. Then the next thing it did was it promoted headers, and then it did a change type step. Awesome, no problem. Now let's see the data types that Power Query has added to my columns. So I'm going to check the first one, order ID. Now my order ID is text, okay, that's fine. My order date, now I'm saying ABC here, which means that what? It is text. Now, just to mention, right? If you are doing this in Power Query in Excel, and in your own version of Excel, you don't see these icons here. Maybe you are using Excel 2016, which you shouldn't be. Get Microsoft 365. So yes, you are using Excel 2016 and you don't see this icon here. In Excel 2016, it's not available there. What you just need to do to also know the data type you are working with is I can select a column, and under the home tab, you would see an option for data type. So at the top here, you see it shows data type text. Another place you can see that as well is if I go to the transform tab, you see under this group here, I also have data type text. So that's also another way to know what data type you have on a column and also change it. Okay. So order ID is a text, order date is a text, which should not be. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to select that icon there, and I'm just going to choose date. And then it's going to ask me, do I want to replace or add a new step? I'm going to say add a new step. And the moment I add a new step, I see I now have some errors. So this one is giving me an error, that one is giving me an error. And then I'm wondering why. So I want to check what did I have before. I'm going to come to my apply step and click the third option there. And I'm saying, okay, 8/11/2016, 8/11/16, 8/11/16. So it seems my date format is, if I'm looking at my values, it is what? Day hyphen month hyphen year. Okay. I'm going to click the next step. And then I see that instead of having, in this first one, instead of having 8th of November 2016, I click this one and I'm having 11th of August 2016. So Power Query thinks that the first number that I have was the month, and then the next one is the day, and then the next one is the year. And this usually happens when you bring in data that has a particular date system that is different from what you have in Power Query or what you have as the regional settings of your system. But not to worry, right? You can always update that. So primarily we have two common ways of having dates. Is either you have date, month, year, or month, day, year. Now, one good thing is in the US they use month, day, year. In the UK they use day, month, year as representing date. So what I can just do is I'm going to select this icon here again, and instead of using date, I'm going to say using local. Right, so I want to use date format in a particular region. Okay, so it's, don't know, my Power BI is a bit slow. Okay, now the option is here. So you see this box here, it says change type using local. What do I want to change type? I want to change a date. Now what local do I want to use? So the values I have in my column is day, month, year, and that is for UK. So I'm going to select, okay, I want to use English United Kingdom. Okay, and I click OK, and immediately I have the right date. And you see under my column quality, valid is what? 100%. Good news. So I'm going to do the same thing for my shipping date because it has the same structure, right? I'm going to click the ABC icon. I'm going to go to using local. I'm going to bring up that box again. I don't know why it's taking so much time. So it's going to bring up the box. I'm going to go to data type, select date, change the local to United Kingdom, and I'm going to click OK. So now I've changed it from text, which is detected before, to date. Good. I go through the other columns. Ship mode is text, customer ID is text, customer name is text. Fine. All of those are text. There is no problem with that. And then I look at my sales. Okay, that is showing as a decimal number. Good job. And every other column is fine with the data type. Awesome. I'm done with my 2016 2015 file. So we've connected to an Excel file, we've connected to a CSV file. Now let's also look at the folder again. So we brought in this Excel file, we brought in this CSV file. Now we want to bring in the text file. So that will be our third file format that we're bringing in. So how do we bring in another one? Just like we did before, we went to what? Home tab, new source. Another way to do that is if I just come over to this queries pane here, where I have the list of queries, and I'm going to just right click right on an empty space, and then I see new query. And then if I go to new query, I see text/CSV. So I'm bringing in a text file, .txt file. So I select text, and then I navigate to the folder. I select the file I want to bring in. I click open. So just like it did for the CSV, it's going to create a connection, scan the file, try to find how they are splitted. And then I see, okay, delimiter is a custom delimiter, which is just this pipe symbol that you see here. All right, that's fine. And then it has gone through it, try to find the right data types. I'm going to click OK and see what Power Query has done for us. Okay, so as usual, what did it do first? Okay, first thing is what? Query name, sales 2014. I think I'm okay with that. I go to the source. Okay, it brought in the data, it promoted the headers, and then it changed type. All right. Okay, I have this Excel file open. I'm going to close this. Okay, sorry about that. So now we look at data types. Okay, order ID is text, order date is correctly identified as text. We have the sales, I say sales. We have the customer information as text. We have the product information also as text, which is fine. And then our sales, our quantity, our discount, our profit as numbers. Awesome. So we are good to go. We brought in our 2017, we brought in our 2016, we brought in our 2015. Now we have all these tables separated, brought in different tables, right? All these queries rather in different tables. So we want to just create one central sales table that we are going to use. So one central sales table. So we want to take the 2017, combine it with the 2016, 2015, combine it with the 2014. Now, how do we do that? Or what is that operation that we want to do? In Power Query, that operation is referred to as appending. So I want to append queries on each other. So like I said, we want to change the structure of a table as a whole. So I go to the Home tab, and then I try and look for where I have append queries, and that is it at the right hand here. So I have merge queries and I have append queries. I'm going to click on the drop down beside append queries, and I see two options, append queries and append queries as new. So the append queries would basically leave the structure I have in whatever query I have selected and append the other ones to it. But what I want to do is I want to keep these three queries I have and create a new query that appends the three of them together. So I'm going to select append queries as new, and then it's going to bring up a box, right, and ask me, okay, what do I want to append? 2 tables, 3 tables, or 3 or more tables. In this case, or in our case, we have 3 or more tables. I select 3 or more tables. I'll say, okay, so let's start with the 2014. We have available tables and we have tables to append. So I have 2014 already in the list. I'll add my 2016-15, click add, select my 2017, click add, and I'll click OK. So Power Query is going to take those 3 columns append it together. So let's examine the results that we have. First thing is what? Rename your query. I'm going to change this to sales, just one sales table. And then I'm going to look at what we have. So we have order ID, order date, ship date. Everything is looking right. We have the right data type on all of the columns. Good so far, good so far. Now, just to mention, right? Maybe you have a situation where you are working with a set of tables and you are trying to append um, those tables, but it's not working. Now, why is Power Query able to append these tables correctly? It's simply because, one, all of the tables that we appended together have the same column name. Okay, name is identical across all tables. And then the data types are also the same. Let's see what happens if we change the name of one column. Okay, I'll go to my 2014 sales and this order ID here. I'm just going to double click to rename a column. I'm just going to double click, and instead of the uppercase D, I'm going to change it to a lowercase d. And let's see what happens to our sales. So remember, the sales query is connected to all of those three queries, just appending. So any change I make in any of those three queries will get reflected in the sales table. I'm going to change this one to lowercase d, and I'll hit enter. And let's go back to our sales table and see what we have, if that has any impact. So we have order ID in small letter case. Let's see if we have a separate one for uppercase, and then you see at the extreme right we have another column referring to order ID in capital letter case, and that's because the column don't match. So Power Query scans through those tables we wanted to combine, okay, and it says, okay, this column is here, this column is here. It tries to give a list of columns that would encompass all of the columns you have in that table. So if you're expecting an exact append of those columns, you must make sure that the column names are identical down to the case, right? If you have a capital O, every column must have a capital O. So Power Query is case sensitive. Another thing is also, you may not see it, but if you have order space ID and a space, right, a trailing space, that would also affect, because Power Query will see that character, right, and say, okay, order space ID is not the same thing as order space ID space. Okay, so that's one thing to always keep in mind. So I'm going to go back to the 2014 query, and then you see that it has added a new step which is called renamed columns. I'm just going to delete that step to return back to what we had. And if I go to my sales query now, I see that, okay, my order ID is now there in capital letters. And if I scroll down to the end, I don't see that other extra column that was added. Okay, so far so good. We've brought in all our sales table, and then we have appended it, and we also looked at why data types are important, and also why all the columns of your table have to be the same case, same data type if you want to do an append. Okay, let's look at what other tables we need to bring in. We're on time, 5:44 p.m. Okay, so let's look at what other tables we need to bring in. We have the customer database, which is an Excel file. So we're going to bring in the customer database. I'm going to close this now. So we can use any method we want. We can go to the home tab, click on new source, select Excel workbook, and then select customer database and click open. So it is going to create a connection, read the data that we have in the Excel workbook, and then show me what do I want to select. Now, in these cases, for the data we have, all of the tables has just one, what's it called now? Just one worksheet. So I'm going to click on sheet 1 and I look at the preview, and I'm just going to select it that is the data I want to bring in, and I'm going to click on OK. Okay. All right. So now we have brought in the customers table. As always, first step, I'm going to rename my query. So I can rename my query by coming here and highlighting it and renaming it, or while I am on my query, in the queries pane here on the left, I can just do what? Right click and click on rename. I think it's there. Oh, yeah, rename, or I can select it and I hit the F2 key and I'm in edit mode for that name. So I'm just going to select that and I'm going to just name it customers. Right, I'm going to name it customers and I hit OK. So let's now look at what Power Query has done. So that's always a good step. Even though you bring in data, Power Query applies a few steps. Look at it, right? Take control of what Power Query has done and confirm if Power Query has done what you need. All right. So applied steps. First step is what? Source. I look at what is the output of source. Okay, Power Query went to that file. And this time around, we have two objects. So we have a sheet one, which is the data that we imported. And then we have this filter database. Okay, so someone was working on that data and they created a filter. No problem. I go to navigation and I say, okay, Power Query went into that file and only picked the sheet one. Awesome. Now, if we as we are at navigation now, if I look at the structure of the data, I see that, oh, we have some opening rows, right? Top rows that don't really contain information that we need. So in this case, the name of the store is Walmart Superstore, and it says, okay, list of customers as at 2017, and then there's another blank row before we now get to the true header. Now, we don't really want this because Power Query doesn't know that those three rows are not part. And what Power Query just did was what? It promoted headers and then did a change type. So that's not what I want to do. So I can always delete what Power Query has done. I'm going to come to the change type step here, and the X, I'm going to press X. It removes that step. I'm also going to press promoted headers because that's not what I want to do. So now while we're on the navigation step, what I want is what? I want to take out these first three rows. So row 1, row 2, row 3. I don't want it to be part of the data I'm bringing in. All right, so what am I doing now? I'm changing the entire structure of the table. I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I'm going to look for an option that relates to me removing rows from a table. Okay, I see reduce rows. Okay, this is what? Remove rows. I click on remove rows. It says, okay, I have some options here. Okay, I think remove top rows is similar to what I want. I select remove top rows. This box comes up, asks me what's the number of rows I want to remove. I click on 3 and I select OK. Now Power Query has removed the top rows. What if Power Query did something I don't like? It's very easy. I just come to my apply step, exit out, try something else. Okay, so sometimes you may not always know what exactly it is that you wanted to do, right? When you try an option, see what it brings out. You try it, it's not what you want. You just go to the apply step, X. So we don't have Ctrl Z here. That's our own Ctrl Z. So you just exit out. All right. So Power Query now has removed the top rows, which is looking good. Now I want to make this first row the header of the table. I have what? Two options. I come to transform. Yeah, I come to transform. So sometimes I forget. And at the right hand side here, I see use first row as headers. So I can click it and use first row as headers. But there's an easier option, right? Just beside this table here, the first column here, you see this small table icon that is very similar to this use first row as headers icon. Okay, I'm just going to click that drop down here, and then I have a set of options, right? And then the second option there I see is what? Use first row as headers. I'm just going to click that. So even if I'd done it from here, or I'd done it from this option here in the transform tab, I'd have gotten the same result. Now what happens? I promoted headers, Power Query again did what it does best, added another change type. So most times there are certain transformations that you do that Power Query automatically adds a change type step. Okay, so there's already a change type step, but I'm also going to still do what? I'm also going to confirm what Power Query has done. So I'm going to go through the columns again. Customer ID, customer name, okay, text. This location table is looking funny, but we'll come back to it in a minute or in a second. Then I see postal code, region, everything is looking fine. So my location table is not looking correct. It says location, city, state, and country. So the city, the state, and the country has been merged into one table. And then Luckily enough, we have an indication from the column that shows us that, okay, it's a city, comma, state, comma, country. So which means that I want to split this column before actually doing any change type. So let's say I want to do that before doing my change type. I would X out the change type step, and then I'll go to this column. Now, so what I want to do is what? I want to change the structure of this column by splitting it. Now, sometimes you may not know where the option is on the transform tab. That's not a problem. You have an option. If I right click on that column, so I have the column selected, right? This column I want to change, I have it selected. I right click on it and then I see split column. So when I select split column, I have options. What do I want to split by? By delimiter, by number of characters, by position. So in this case, I'm splitting by delimiter because I have a character that is separating the values I want to split. So I'll select split by delimiter, and then I have this box that comes up that, okay, what is the delimiter? Okay, my delimiter is a comma, fine. Where should I split it at each occurrence of the delimiter, or at the leftmost or at the rightmost? So if I say each occurrence, it means that anywhere you see a comma, split this value. So for every place it sees a comma, it's going to what? Split the value. That's what I want. I click OK. And then Power Query has added the step, split column by delimiter, and again that added another change type step. I don't yet want that. I'll do what? I'll exit out. Now I look at the columns that have been created. So my location column now, if I go to the previous step, see that we have just one column. And then when I selected the second one, it has been what? Splitted down into three. So I have location state dot one, location this dot two. If I scroll to the right, I have location state dot three. All right. So which means that it has gone through each of them and then that splitted it into different columns. That's good. What I'm going to do next is what? Rename it. So this one is going to be my state. I just come to the column header and double click, and I call this what? City. I said state, that's wrong. City, because I know that the first one is city, the second one is state, and the third one is the country. I come to the next one, I also double click, I look at that and I select and I change that to state. Okay, and then I select the last column, double click, and I change that to country. And that is the three columns have been changed to the right data type. Now we can also now confirm, the column profile and the column quality to see what do we even actually have in these columns. Okay, so for a customer table, right, if you remember from the first class we had on Excel, one of the three golden rules of a data set is what? Number one, each column must contain only one single data type. Number two, each row should have a record for, each row should represent a record for one value. So in this case now, I have a customer table, and so for my customer table, one row should be what? Per customer. So every customer has a customer ID. Each row should be per customer. How can I confirm that I have one row per customer? I'll just select my customer ID. I'll go to the view tab and then I'll enable some column quality and profile attributes. So in terms of the column quality, I say I have 100% valid entries there. That's one good news. I click on column distribution. Now for my column distribution, okay, what am I expecting? I'm expecting distinct values and unique values all across. Now for some reason it is not bringing it out, but there's still another way for us to look at it. I can select column profile. Okay, so it says this distribution cannot be computed for the selected column, which means it is because what? Every single column in that, every single entry in that column is what? Distinct. And if I look at the count, I see that my count is 793. So I have 793 customers in this table. Everything is fully distinct. That's good news. I would have checked column profile. I would uncheck or leave column distribution on for now, and then I can also look at the other values and see, okay, on the city column I have 41 distinct values, that is 41 cities. Not bad. Is it what I'm expecting? Is it not what I'm expecting? Okay, maybe it was not what I'm expecting. I can change it to, is the column profile based on top 1000 or not? In this case, If I look at the bottom here, I have some statistics that tells me I have 8 columns, 793 rows. So it's still part of 1000. So that means I have 41 cities here. Okay, all of this is looking fine. I'm okay with that. I would uncheck the column distribution. Now we've brought in the data, we splitted it, did a few things. There is still one more thing for us to do. And what is that? Now, if you remember when we splitted, let me just go to the previous step. If I click on this promoted headers step, right, you see that I splitted this by comma. So anywhere it finds a comma, it splits. But there is still a space between the comma and the next word. So we have state, comma, space, city, comma, space, state. So that means if I come back to the current step we have, each of these values might have a trailing space, right? You may have this, a leading space, rather, a space at the beginning of each word. So I want to clean out those spaces so that I don't have wonky visualizations, because maybe in some cases, right, I had the spaces, the comma without a space, and then the country. So how do I do that? That operation is called, I want to trim, right? Like trim, slim fit or whatever. So I want to trim these values and remove those spaces. And I want to do 3 columns at the same time. I will select the first column. I'll hold my shift key this time around and select the end of the columns I want to trim. So in this case, it just says, okay, this is the beginning, this is the end, highlights everything in between. And then what I want to do is what? Trim. I'll come over to, sometimes I forget where this thing is. Come over to home. Is it on home? No. Okay, not bad. I can always just right click if I don't know where it is, right? I've selected the 3. I hover on any of those 3 columns. I do what? I right click. And then I go to transform. And then another transform, I go to trim. And I select trim. So you may not see it. If there were leading spaces in some values I would not see, they will be what? Trimmed. And those spaces will be out of there. So we brought in the sales table. We brought in the customers table. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for now and ask if we have any questions in the chat.
No, there are no
No, there are
questions
no
in the
questions.
chat.
Okay, there are no questions in the chat. All right, that's fine. So we've brought in the sales table, we've brought in the customers table, and we're already at our 6 o'clock mark. I'm just going to show one more thing, which is a good practice for you when you're working with different data sets, and then you have some queries that are just going to be helper queries to other queries, right? So in this case now, we're not going to work on this table, sales 2017 table. We're not going to work on the sales 2016 table or the sales 2014 table. We are going to work on just the sales table, right? So what I'm going to do is what? I'm going to select this sales 2017 table and I'll right click on it. Now when I right click, I see 2 key options here that I want us to point to. I have enable load and include in report refresh. Now when I say enable load, it means that Power Query is going to say, okay, you've run this, you've connected to this data source, you connected to this Excel file, this Excel workbook, this text file, and I want to run transformations on it. Should I load it into Power BI, or you just want to keep it here and use it for something else? Now for our sales 2017, we want to just use it for something else, right? We don't want it in the Power BI file. So I'm going to select this enable load here and see that immediately the icon, the text is now in italics. That's an indication that this query is going to run, right? The transformations are going to happen, but we're not going to have the output of this query as a table in Power BI. So I'm going to do that for my sales table 2017. I'll do that for the 2016 file as well. Right click, enable load. Do that for the 2014 file again as well. Right click, enable load. Okay, and then these other 2 columns are what I'm going to take in, transform, and add to my data model. So I've done that. That is one way to help you organize your queries. The second thing I can do is I can group those queries into folders, because let's say in some cases, right, you might have different queries everywhere, and then Okay, someone says they can't hear anything. Please confirm that you can still hear me. Oh, okay.
I can hear you perfectly. I don't know.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
And there's
Okay.
someone raising their hand in the
Oh,
participant.
okay.
Is it a question? Just type it in the chat.
Okay.
You can
Okay.
continue.
All right. So
Thank you.
now I want to group the queries into the ones that I'm not going to be loading and then the ones that I'm going to be loading. So I'm going to call those ones I'm not loading into Power Query. I'm going to call them helper queries, right? So what I'm going to do, I will select this query. I'll hold my control, select this one, select this one, and then I'll right click and I see an option that says move to group. I select move to group and I choose new group. Now all of those queries will now be added into a new group. What do I want to call the group? I'm just going to call it helper queries. Okay, and then I can add some description that says, okay, these queries are used to support other transformations. Okay, so that next time when I look at it, I'll don't ask myself, why did I group this? So I'll click OK, and then immediately those ones are grouped into one, and then I have another set of other queries, right? So these other ones too, I want to group them into another query. I'll select the sales, I'll select the customers, I'll right click, move to group. I don't want to put them in helper queries. I want to create a new group, and then I'm going to call this group my data model. That is, any query I have in this group are actually going to be loaded into my data model. I would click OK, right? So I have my data model queries. Select the sales one. I look at the preview, and I have my helper queries. So that means I can just collapse this folder here, and that will make me focus on just what I need. So we've brought in sales, we've brought in customers, right? Now, I don't know if I still have one thing I want us to cover in this class before we move to the next class. Can I still continue? I know we are at the 6 o'clock mark already.
Yeah, you
Can I?
can. You can
All right. Thank you.
continue.
So we brought in the sales, we brought in the customers table. Now, we also now want, as part of the transformation, right? Because we are going to be building a data model in the next class and in subsequent classes, one of the characteristics is that you should have a table. Each of the tables should contain only specific information. So if I have a sales table should only contain sales information. If I have a customers table should just contain customers information. If I have a product table should just contain product information. If I have a date table should just contain date information. Okay. Now, if we look at this sales table or this sales query closely, I have my order ID. Yes, all of those relate to a sale or an order, as the case may be, which is almost the same thing. And then I have my order date, my ship date, how it was shipped. Then I have my customer ID and my customer name. Now, do I need this here? I also have the customer state and the customer's region. Do I need this here? Maybe, maybe not. We'll get to that shortly. What I want us to do here is to look at the product information. So I have product ID, the product category, the product subcategory, the product name, and then my regular other sales information, right? So what I can do is, okay, I want to break out the product information from this table and have it as a separate table. Why? Because when I asked those guys to give me the data to do my analysis, they did not give me my product, did not give me a list of the products that we had. Okay, but me, I'm an expert analyst. I've been doing analysis for a long time. I want to always make sure that I do the right thing. So I said, okay, I'm going to create a product table and follow, the right thing to do. So what we can do is we can create a product table from the sales table. So what I'll just do is first I'll duplicate this sales query, right? And say, okay, do all the transformations, give me the results, and then I will now proceed from there. I'll right click on this and I get an option that says duplicate. So I have a new query, sales 2. I'm going to rename it to what? Product, because that's what I want to call it. Product. Oh, yes, let's use products. Okay, so yeah, okay. So we have the product table, okay? And from this product table, what we just need, right, are the product related information only. That's what we want to be in this table. So that means I want to remove other columns. But in this table, we have 16 columns. I don't want to start clicking one by one, to select what I need. So I want to change the structure of the table. So I'll go to the home tab and then you see under this manage columns, I see choose columns. I'll go select it and I'll select choose columns. So choose columns is okay. Select the columns that you want to keep in this table. I would uncheck every column and then I would look for my product related information. So okay, I have product ID, product category, product subcategory, and product name. Those are the only columns that relate to product information in this table, and I'll click OK. So that will do what? To slim down the table, remove all of those queries that I don't need. So that is step 1. Reduce the queries down to what we only need. Step 2 now is to now make that table to only contain what? 1 row per product. Remember the golden rules, 1 row per product. So how do we do that? We have our product ID. Our product ID always contains a unique, an identifier basically of what the product is. So which means that if we want, sorry, if we want this table to only contain a list of products that we need, we must make sure that each product ID occurs in that table only once. Okay, only once. So what we can just do is, okay, I'm going to select this product ID table. And what I want to do is what? I want to remove the duplicates that I have on the product ID table. Now, I don't even remember where that option is in Power Query. Should I go to home? Should I go to transform? Help me, somebody, I don't know. There's no need to panic. I'll just select the product ID, right click, then I look through and see, okay, do I find something similar? Good news. Let's remove duplicate. I select remove duplicate. Okay, so once I select remove duplicate, that table is scanned, duplicate values are removed, and now my product table contains each row 1 product, list of all the products, categories, and subcategories. So I've successfully created what? Another product table. So with a product table created, right, I can now go to my sales table and say, okay, I already have a product table. I'll remove all the other information on my sales that relates to product and just keep 1 column that I can use to link back to my product table, which you already know as what I used to create my what relationships. So I'll go back to my sales table and like just like what I did on the product table, I'll go to home and I'll go to choose columns. And then I'll just say, okay, remove product category, subcategory, product name. It's enough for me to just keep my product ID column. I click on OK. We are making what? Progress. And with that, we've done that for the products. If you go to the customers table as well, in the customers table, we have customer related information. Now, as I'm saying this, I forgot something. We see, if you look at the data types on the customer table, I'm seeing ABC123, ABC123. That means that no data types have been applied to these columns. So let's say I don't want to do the manual work one by one because I have like 25 columns on this table. I will just go to the transform tab, right? And then in this group here, under this any column group, you see data type, and now it is showing any, right? I'll come to the option that is under it and I see detect data type. So Power Query, you go and try and detect data type, and I'll select detect data type. And yeah, so Power Query was able to guess some and not guess the other ones. No problem. I'll update the ones they didn't guess. So my customer name, hold control, customer segment, come to my transform tab, select, and I'm going to choose, these ones are going to be text. Okay, I'll scroll and see which one again doesn't have a data type yet. Okay, my postal code, I'm going to select the icon there. This one's supposed to be whole number for the code, and then my region is supposed to be a text. I'm going to select text. Nice. So we've done the needed transformations on the customers table. So what I wanted to say is this now. We have this customer table existing, right, with more information that we even have on the sales table. So this customer table contains customer name, segment, city, state, location, state, city, country, region. And if I go to my sales table, okay, on my sales table, I have when it relates to customer information, I have customer ID, name, state, region. Okay, so my customers table even contains more information than I have on my sales table. So why it doesn't is that, okay, that's not a problem. I will only keep a column that I would use to reference my customers column. Okay, just one column that I can say, okay, if you join this customers table to this sales table based on these columns, right, I'll be able to find the related customer information. So the last step I added on this query is removed other columns. I want to remove some more columns, and I just want to update the step rather than add a new step. So I'll go to this step here, and then you see there's this gear icon at the right hand side. I would select that icon, and that just gives me back, okay, this is what you have done on this particular step. What more do you want to do? So, okay, I want to remove customer name, customer state, and customer region, right? And just keep only customer ID. And I click on OK. So no new step has been added, but the step, that remove other column step, has been updated to now only contain those columns. So if I scroll down, you see that I only have customer ID, product ID, and my sales related information. Okay, so big thumbs up to us. We've created a sales table. We've stripped it down to only have those columns that we need to link. We've created our customers table. We've created our products table. And now we are at some point where we can work with this data. So I'm going to stop here for this class because we're going to have data transformations 2 on Wednesday, where we'll continue the build-up process. Now, why are we not complete? Why are we not complete with the task yet? Is because if you look at the what's it called? If you look at the folder, right, we've worked with the sales data, we've worked with the customer data, and then we have some additional tables. So if I open the additional tables, you'll see that we have some other information that we are supposed to work with. Okay, so I have first a salesperson table that, okay, for this region, this is the salesperson. So I'm still going to bring that in. And then I also have a returned orders table. That is, even though we made some sales, even though we made some orders, they were actually returned, and then those sales were not counted. So I'm supposed to remove those rows from the sales table. So those are some of the things that we're going to do in the next class. And then we're also going to update the sales table to include information like the discount amount and how long it took to deliver an order, as well as build a date table to complete our model. So for this class, or for today's session, we are at a good point, right? We've built sales, we've built customers, we've built our product table. Now we are good, we are okay to close and load these queries into the data model, right? So I'm going to click close and apply. And then once I click close and apply, all of those transformations that I've done in Power Query, right? Power Query will now say, okay, now it is time to what? Work. Goes into those what's it called? It goes into those workbooks, those CSV file, those text file, brings the data, transforms it, does everything that we did, and loads it into the data model, right, into Power BI. So once it is done, I would show you a preview of what has been created, and then we would end today's session there. So while it works, are there any questions that I need to answer? Okay, let me check the chat. Okay, someone says, can we have the tables we've worked with so we can practice to this stage? Yes, the data set has been provided. I think.
We don't have any questions on the chat for.
Sorry, I didn't hear
If
you.
you have any questions, type in the chat.
Okay, okay. All right, so the data has finished loading. It's just still completing a few processes before it reflects in our model. So, okay, it's done now. And I see that on the right hand side, I have fields and then I have the list of tables that have been brought in. So my customers with a customer table and the columns, the product and the sales. So if I go to the diagram view, which is the third icon I have on this left, so I have the first view is report view, data view, and model view, which is similar to what you had in Excel as the diagram view. If I click on the model view and I just collapse these icons and I zoom out a bit, okay, you see that I have those tables that we brought in. Okay, I have those tables that we brought in, and Power BI has tried to find, okay, how do I connect these tables together? So you saw, oh, I saw customer ID here, I saw customer ID there. I think this guy wants to create a connection between these two tables, so it has tried to do that. Sometimes it does it correctly, sometimes it does not. But in subsequent questions with this week and next week, you would learn about how to properly model your data, how to create the right relationship. So even though Power BI does something for you automatically, you are able to validate that what Power BI has done for you by automatically is actually correct. So that would bring today's session to a close. I think we've covered quite a handful for today. If there are any questions, please drop them in the chat. If you are not able to drop into the chat now, we would continue the session. We'll continue the question and answering in the Slack channel. I think I've tried to answer some questions in the Slack. I'll get to as many as I can, right? I'll get to as many as I can. So, Yusuf, is there any question, anything I need to do again? Okay. Let me see. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good for today. I think Blaga wants to say anything or to be.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Balaji.
Yeah.
I don't know, just Toby, do you have anything to say? Let me just stop recording here.